Morning, Coach. Can you hear us okay?
Yes.
Great. We'll kick things off. We have a number of writers here to ask some questions. First up will be Ralph Russo. Ralph?
Hey, Todd. I wanted to tap into a little of your past experience in college and the NFL. When you joined Georgia, is part of the allure being able to work with so many guys who are sort of potential to be future NFL players? I mean, you've worked at many different levels. I'm wondering if being drawn back to Georgia, part of that was, hey, this is where all the best and future NFL players go.
Well, I think you hit it on the head. I think you want to be at a place where you have no barriers to success. And that starts with being able to get great football players, working with a great staff, an elite academic institution, and being right down the road from Atlanta. So when you're recruiting, players and their families, we check all the boxes. So you want to be a place where you check all the boxes. And that was University of Georgia.
Next will be Steve Croner. Steve?
Was doing a story on Brock Bowers. How soon before he got on campus did you realize he was going to have such an impact on your offense? And how have you made him a better tight end? And how has he made you a better offensive coordinator?
Well, the first part of it is, first of all, we saw his work ethic. I spoke about that, a week ago about how he's wired. So we don't have to touch on that anymore. He's wired the right way. He works awfully hard at his craft. He only knows one speed. So right away, we know he'd be able to contribute. Did we know it'd be to this extent? Of course not. So, but once we saw him work, his skill set, we knew that, we had a chance to have somebody that we could rely on. And as he's continued to develop, Coach Hartley deserves a lot of credit, one, for recruiting him, two, for developing him. We've just tried to continually move him around, put him in a position to make plays. He's embraced that. He works awfully hard. He's had a lot more to do with what we do, in terms of how he works and how he prepares than I've had to do with his progression. I mean, that's just because of the way he's wired.
Next will be Seth Emerson. Seth?
Todd, as great as Stetson was the other night, as really good as he's been, there's obviously 2 games against Alabama that are kind of blot on his resume. Do you see anything kind of common in those games that is instructive about this one, or did you see those 2 games as just kind of separate from the rest of what Stetson does?
Well, I mean, I don't see it as that those 2 games are going to predict the future. I don't see it that way. I see it as, he's played, I don't know how many games as starting quarterback, and like any player, they've had their moments where they haven't played up to what they believe their standard to be, or we believe that standard to be. It just so happens to have come in the second half against the team we're about to play. But, we just need to understand that the first 2 halves of each of those games was outstanding. And I've said that before, he has everything we need to be successful offensively. And our issues with turnovers aren't his issue in particular. That's everybody in this country. If you turn the ball over, you're not going to win, no matter how you do it. The first turnover a year ago was a batted ball that was out of his control. The second interception was a tip pass on an in cut that went directly to him. Now the third one was a poor decision. So the bottom line is I can do it better as a coordinator to put him in better position to be successful. He understands that. Our team understands that. So, I expect him to play well, just like I did last week.
Next will be Chip Towers. Chip?
Yeah, kind of in that vein, Coach, you have an extensive NFL background, playing another team in close proximity just a few weeks later. Tell me a little bit about the decisions on what to change, what to do different, what to keep the same, and, maybe have the same thing seem different and that kind of stuff. Seems pretty complicated.
Well, you're right. It is a little bit different. You do get that in the NFL with your division teams where you play them twice, and sometimes you can play them relatively close together like this is. And, and we played them last year. So we've got enough film on what they want to do, and they're not going to change. They're successful for a reason for what they do, and so are we. I mean, if you're constantly changing what you do and your identity, I don't think you're going to be very good at anything. So obviously we take from the things that we did well and build on that, and the things we didn't do as well. And obviously there's calls that we had that in both games, or other opportunities that we didn't get called. So we're looking forward to the opportunity and the shot at it. And they're going to get our best. I can promise you that.
Next week, Anthony Dasher. Anthony?
Hey, Todd. How do you best quantify, the improvements when you're talking about Stetson that he's made from last year to right now to become starting quarterback?
Well, I think he's obviously second year in the system, being around us as a coaching staff. What we do offensively, I think, is big. And just playing. I think we forgot at times, that he really hadn't played a lot of football here. And I think being around the same players, I think the consistency that we've had at times, that we've tried to get the ball to those guys have helped. But to me, he's matured in terms of understanding what we want to get done, and also just playing. There's just the reps that you get in practice and then games that get into your memory bank, whether they're scars or things you've solved or decision-making, I think all comes into that. And the longer you play, a guy like Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady or those guys, or Ryan Fitzpatrick, some of the things they do now, they didn't do early on in their career. That develops over time, and they continue to improve their game and their understanding of what we want done.
All right, next will be Dennis Dodd. Dennis?
Got it this time. Todd, you were pretty emphatic of your support for Stetson last week when talking about JT. Stetson's got 10 touchdowns in the last 3 games. I just wonder if there was a point where, I don't know what the word is, that you trusted him more to go downfield, to do more things, or was that overestimating it?
Oh, I don't know. I think the hardest part is the way our season has gone. Our season, we've had a tremendous season. And for a number of those games, we put ourselves in position to where we didn't need the quarterback to make plays in the second half of games. Some people could look at that and say, well, why didn't you take the opportunity to continue to get more reps or get other quarterbacks opportunities? Not in my mind. My mind was to win that one game in particular and get off the field without, injuries. And so that's probably the hardest part when you try to look at, throwing the ball down the field in terms of the opportunity. Our defense played so well. And so I think that's probably a little unfair that we didn't trust him to throw it down the field. It was just a matter of opportunities, I think, is more than anything, because the way the games went.
Next we'll hear from Mark Schleybaugh. Mark? Mark, you with us?
You talked about Georgia checking all the boxes in terms of resources and recruiting area and facilities and everything else. Were you aware that they hadn't won a title since 1980 when you got there? How much have you heard about it, and what would it mean to end that?
I had not, because I really, in a lot of ways, that didn't factor into it, because I knew what the place was like now. And I knew the success that they had, and we're awfully close in previous years to that. And that's what you can ask, is just an opportunity to put yourself in the tournament or in position, I guess the best way to put it. So I just knew that the opportunity to get really good players, and lead academic institution, Atlanta being right down the road, unbelievable support. And I think that's where you want to be.
Next will be Matt Baker. Matt?
Hey, Todd, I'm with the Tampa Bay Times. So I wanted to ask you about your time with the Buccaneers. I'm sure you've learned something every stop you've been at. What about your time with the Bucs has kind of helped you become a better coach at this level?
Well, first of all, I loved my time at Tampa, the 3 years I was there, working for a close friend and mentor, Dirk Cutter, gave me an opportunity to come back to the NFL as an offensive coordinator. We still have a place down there, but the organization was first class. The Glazers treated me with unbelievable respect. The front office, was tremendous. What I remember is, unfortunately, we just didn't get it done. We didn't win enough games, but really enjoyed the players. We had a great nucleus of players. I learned a lot in terms of how hard it is to win in the NFL. And I shouldn't say I learned that. I knew that anyways, but it's hard, to win in the NFL. And but the bottom line is we didn't win enough games, but the relationships that I had with everybody as part of the organization and the coaches and the players was unbelievable.
Next will be Mark Weiser. Mark?
Hey, Todd, being a guy that grew up in the Midwest, what will it be like to coach this game in Indianapolis? And we have family coming from that part of the country, and being a play caller in the national championship game, does that excite you as a guy that's been doing this for a long time?
Well, I don't miss the cold, so that part of it doesn't overly excite me. Thank God the game's indoors, so that doesn't factor into that. Sure, it's always nice to be close enough where family can come to the game and see us play, and but we obviously don't control that. But I'm excited for the game. I'm excited for our players. This is about our players and the opportunity that they have in front of them that they've earned. I mean, they've earned this by the hard work they put in starting at the end of last year. This is a year-long process that our guys have been through to get to this point and to have this opportunity. And it's everything that we do it for. Everybody has this initial goal going into it. And our guys have worked incredibly hard to get to this point and have trusted in the message that we've sent. And they've carried that out for the most part throughout the year. So I'm excited to see them play this doesn't come around very often, this opportunity to win a championship. So I think our guys are excited. We've started off the week the right way, and we'll see.
Next will be Mike Rodak. Mike?
Just on Brock Bowers, how do you approach, Alabama playing the second time now and trying to stay a step ahead of them, presumably with them trying to stop him after the impact he had in the first game?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, we'd be guessing. We'd be guessing at certain things they would do to stop a particular player. We've got film from the last few years of them playing some really, really good players. You go back to, playing LSU a couple of years ago with the receivers they had in Joe Burrow, and they did a couple of things to try and change that up a little bit. But the reality is they're good because they do what they do. Sure, do they understand an opponent's really, really good players and what you want to do schematically? Of course. But they knew that going into the last game. Obviously, he had a number of catches, but they knew that going into the last game. So we don't anticipate a heck of a lot different, just maybe in terms of, where he's located or, different calls based on formation sets and what we do to get him the ball. But outside of that, to think that they're going to line up two guys over him and double team him it would be a stretch.
Next will be Mike Griffith. Mike?
Hey, Coach. Obviously, we see you operating at the 10,000-foot view from the press box, but on the sidelines, we see JT engaging Stetson, and we hear Kirby talking about the quarterback room. I think you've mentioned it. How important is that, and as far as the in-game adjustments for those quarterbacks to communicate?
Well, I think any communication can be a positive or a negative depending on how it's presented and what you're telling a player. It can be a positive or negative for me. It can be a positive or negative from any interaction you give the quarterback from a confidence standpoint, from an awareness standpoint. from what you're expecting to see or what you've seen. So all of that's a plus. I think JT is going to do a great job in a very tough situation of embracing that part of it and doing everything he can to help Stetson and us in game prep and being ready should the opportunity arise. And Stetson has done the same even when he wasn't playing. So I do think that, those guys staying involved in the game and the information that we give them is critically important throughout a game.
All right, our next question is from Zach Klein. Zach?
In your years of major college football and the NFL, where would you rank Will Anderson's ability to wreak havoc on opposing offenses and cause problems in preparation?
Well, you certainly want to know where he is. And it's not just from a pass rush standpoint. He does a really good job of, if you get into the zone read game where he tries to hit you at the junction point, and try to disrupt from the open side. So, and he plays with relentless effort. I think he has a tremendous skill set. They do a good job of moving him around, and, he plays with relentless effort. Those are all, good signs of a player that you've always got to be aware of where he's at and the matchups that you have. And like any team, they're no different, just like with him, just like last week, you got to be careful of getting yourself into a drop back passing game all the time and putting yourself at risk.
All right, Coach, thank you very much for your time today. We look forward to seeing you in Indianapolis.
Thank you.